Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. A picture's worth 1,000 words, at least for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Now, we've gotten to a point in our society where the majority of people think that everything is a meme, everything is a joke, and that's exactly what the occult wants you to think so that they could reveal themselves in front of you, which is what they do. And by living by universal law, which requires them to reveal themselves, nobody out there even notices. So Donald Trump Jr. posted this image of his father, Donald Trump, looking in the mirror and seeing a goat. Now, we know that 90%, 95%, maybe even 99% of the population looks at this and has been trained, without them realizing it, to think that he's the greatest of all time. Nobody ever thinks of why somebody decided to come up with an acronym and then push it out into the world on television when it comes to who's the greatest of all time, musician-wise, who's the greatest rapper of all time, who's the greatest football player of all time, who's the greatest wrestler of all time, who's the greatest of all time. We constantly hear it, but nobody out there understands how the Tavistock Institute for Social Engineering works. They put these things out so that they can normalize things. And they've normalized the goat, and most of the population doesn't have the slightest clue. They think things like this are just out there as a joke. And that's how they get away with doing the things they do out in the open. Now, this picture is awfully eerily similar to the one that Elon Musk put up when he was, in fact, looking directly in a mirror, wearing that outfit that he wore for Halloween, which Elon Musk's calling card is that he wears these outfits on Halloween so that nobody out there has a right to question him. A lot of the Satanists like to do that. And here he is wearing a Baphomet outfit, which I'm sure the majority of you remember. And of course, right on the back for everybody to see is an upside down crucifix. And some of you might remember on another Halloween when he dressed up as the Egyptian deity Anubis, who is the Egyptian god of the afterlife, right? But nothing to see here, folks. As Confucius once said, signs and symbols rule the world, not words nor laws. But when you convince 100% of the population to only perceive things in words and laws, then 9 times out of 9 or 10 times out of 10, they're not going to see any of the signs and symbols in front of them, even if it's as obvious as these images that we've all seen over the years. Every single celebrity has a photo of themselves holding a hand up over their eye, doing the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, the eye of providence, that eyeball that's represented on the back of the dollar bill. But how many people out there see these pictures and roll their eyes and say, they're just trolling, they're just kind of being silly for the photo, right? When we see the repetition and the pattern right in front of our faces. So Donald Trump, his son, posts this picture of his father looking in the mirror and seeing a goat. Now, how tone deaf can you actually be? We know that these people are not tone deaf. We know that they have their finger on the pulse because they listen to us, they monitor us, they use algorithms to track the things we discuss, and clearly the majority of people have somewhat of an understanding of what's going on in terms of the Illuminati, the New World Order, and the occult. Now, you're telling me that Donald Trump Jr. never heard of the Baphomet before? Now, I know the majority of civilians probably haven't heard of the Baphomet, even though the Baphomet has been displayed to them over and over and over again. They've just been trained not to pay attention to it. You're telling me that Donald Trump Jr. didn't know this, that Donald Trump himself wasn't aware of this, just like when I talked about Donald Trump's hand on the Bible for his inauguration, how he didn't have his hand on the Bible. They are doing these things right in front of us and getting away with it. In fact, some of you may remember when Donald Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act in 2019 and established this ridiculous United States Space Force. Does everybody out there remember? Well, Donald Trump on his website, this is his official store where he sells these items on his store. It is part of the Trump Foundation store. This isn't some random fan who made this website. And here is Donald Trump's Space Force hat. And of course, people out there think that somebody just got on a a magnadoodle and scribbled this idea together of what the logo for Space Force should be, but all one has to do is turn it upside down to see what it actually is. Do you see the goat horns and the upside down pentagram? Here's a closer look. For those of you with eyes to see and ears to hear, you can even see how they deliberately chose to use that NASA fake spaceship because it looks exactly like the Baphomet's face with the ears and the face, and then you can see the goat horns and even the upside down pentagram right there, right on top of the hat. That's how easy it is to see these things. But the majority of people have been trained to not look for these things. They've been trained in lies. They've been trained that these types of things, if your brain doesn't look at signs and symbols and perceive them, then you're never going to see it. But if you actually start looking at signs and symbols, if you start looking at magazine covers or headshots of these celebrities or logos, you'll start to see repetition and a pattern, how they all use pentagrams, crescent moons, occult symbols in their corporate logos. Then you'd say to yourself, wait a minute, I thought these people were going to school for marketing. They don't have any great ideas. They all look the same, from Starbucks to Sunoco. I mean, name all these companies that have upside down pentagrams. It's utter insanity. Of course, the Baphomet worship is an obvious thing that goes back to Satanism, the occult. Everybody should remember, I've covered this with the Knights Templar who were pretending to be Christian, who were really worshiping the Baphomet in secret. That's exactly what occurs today. These people on the outside claim to be Christian. Most Christians don't judge them by their fruit, or they might actually wake up to Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Most of these people outwardly present themselves as Christians, just like the Knights Templar did, but in secret, they were worshiping the Baphomet. And as I've covered before, Friday the 13th, why this is some date that's so feared by the actual occult. They want you to be fearful Friday the 13th and think that Jason Voorhees is going to come out of a Porto-John and run into your home on Friday the 13th, when the origins of this were actually the quote-unquote execution of the Knights Templar who were caught worshiping the Baphomet. And Aleister Crowley, of course, is tied into this as well, teaching in his OTO about the Baphomet, even signing his logo when he autographed or signed things, books, etc. He would use the cross or the sigil of the Baphomet, which you can see right on that photo. And this is what it looks like up close. So Crowley was a magician, an occultist, and he believed that the Baphomet represented the union of opposites, of life, of love, and light. He taught all about the Baphomet, and of course Crowley rejected Our Father from the Bible and proposed that the Baphomet was derived from Father Mithras. And we can even go back and see Pan worship, the god Pan, okay? There's a link between the Baphomet and the Greek god Pan, with the goat-headed figure associated with Satanism. Of course, Pan has the legs of a goat and the horns on his head as well. And just for common sense, for anyone out there that doesn't think there's a correlation between a goat and Satanism, it's literally, the Baphomet is the logo of the Satanic Temple. Now, this is where we run into problems in our world, because people are so dumb that the Satanic Temple, who rolls out this Baphomet with the upside down pentagram and all of it on it, with two kids admiring the goat, they come out and they tell you that they don't actually worship Satan, even though you can find rituals that they're doing online and their tighty-whities, all stuff that looks just like the Freemasonic rituals that I've exposed over the years. All they have to do is say, we don't worship the devil, and we're supposed to take them at their word. Just like Donald Trump says, I'm a Christian. And everybody out there goes, Donald Trump's a Christian. Who are you to criticize Donald Trump? Who are you to say that the Satanic Temple worships Lucifer when they say they don't? Well, I'm just using common sense logic here, right? Which is another term I feel like Trump stole from the truth community, because I've been using that term for quite some time, getting back to common sense. Well, this is common sense logic, right? They use the goat with the pentagram. It's the Satanic Temple's logo. I mean, how much more of an affiliation do you need between the goat and Satanism, right? And of course, when we look at the Baphomet, a lot of the things that you see in this basic photo of the Baphomet we're surrounded by, but nobody ever notices any of it. Nobody notices things like the tattoos on Baphomet's arm, right? Solve and coagula. This is something in alchemy that means dissolve and coagulate. It describes the process of breaking down a substance before rebuilding it into something new. It's kind of like something similar we hear in today's world with the phoenix rising, with the constant build back better stuff that we hear. And is it a surprise that it's tattooed right on the arm of J.K. Rowling? I mean, are people familiar with J.K. Rowling? He's only writing these books that teach young children to get involved in witchcraft and sorcery called Harry Potter. That's what J.K. is known for. And of course, J.K. won't claim to be a witch. J.K. won't claim to be a Satanist, but has it tattooed right on its arms. And of course, we've seen Lady Gaga Barf Bag doing the as above, so below, the symbol that Baphomet does with his hands. We've seen Beyonce do it. We've even seen pop singer Poppy, who I've done a ton of videos on, from blood baptisms that Poppy does in videos. I mean, that's how obvious they could make stuff and still people don't see it because they've been trained. It's art. It's artistic expression, right? Where Poppy has a video where it's doing as above, so below. It's doing all sorts of satanic things, including taking a blood bath, right? But that's not enough for them to see, to realize these people are Satanists. No different than Machine Gun Kelly and Megan Fox, right? Deciding to drink one another's blood. Oh, come on, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? He's taking blood baptism in his videos as well. We even saw on the TV show The Voice how they deliberately put this in Life Force with John Legend and some demon next to him doing as above, so below. And sometimes they'll do the 666 symbol with as above, so below as well. We see Madonna do on magazine covers. But let's be real. We've throughout this, nightmare that is Hollywood and the music industry, which isn't that long if you think about it. I mean, we're only going, let's just say hypothetically we go back to MTV. So we're going back, to the 80s? Since then, how often do we see these people portray goats or wear these demonic horns on their head, right? You've seen Lady Bartbag every chance it gets doing something that represents the Baphomet, or the performances by Madonna as well, or even album covers like the Rolling Stones, right? A second helping of goat head soup, right? And of course, maybe even the most obvious ones out there is when we look for these signs and symbols associated with Baphomet. When we look at businesses, right? You might remember this famous pizza place that you're not allowed to talk about. And I won't say any more than that. But remember this famous pizza place that people were talking about? Well, one of the reasons that it was uncovered, or part of the uncovering, which of course was them revealing themselves through ridiculous posts that were being made on Instagram that were so disturbing that if you saw your next door neighbor do it, you would call the police on them. If you saw a family member post the things that were being posted by this pizza place, you would have called the FBI and reported a family member because it was that disturbing. And of course, what do we see right in the logo? You see the upside down pentagram and the crescent moon, just like Baphomet, because that's how they reveal themselves. Now, they've pushed the upside down pentagram. They pushed just pentagrams in general, 5-pointed stars, which I call pentagrams, because, a star, if you look through a telescope and you see a star, does it have 5 points? Does anyone out? People want to debate that kind of stuff all the time. Oh, yeah? Is this, when you look through a telescope, is this what you're seeing with this little smiley face on it? Okay, minus the smiley face. Is that what you're seeing? No, it's not. You're just seeing light, right? A beam of light. They've taken it and they've made it the 5-pointed star. And that's why people like Aleister Crowley say everybody's a star. Men and women are stars because it's an occult symbol. So they've even pushed this onto children. And in fact, if you're ever around somebody who has kids, or you're ever just wandering the aisles at a store that has a toy section, you will see that these symbols are on every single toy product you could find. Every Fisher-Price toy, they have the pentagram, they have the crescent moon, they have the spiral as well. And even, I always look at the communist symbol, which is a hammer and sickle. That's what they tell you, right? But I always looked at communism, and I think the majority of people who are awake look at communism as Satan's government. And they, of course, have a crescent moon and a pentagram in their logo as well, but they'll tell you it's a hammer and a sickle. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, this all goes back to the normalization of the term goat, which started in the 90s with people like LL Cool J. Yes, we've had Muhammad Ali call himself the greatest of all time, but they decided to take that acronym and make it normal. They decided to have every celebrity, every rapper, every athlete start referring to themselves as the GOAT. You may remember when I covered Tom Brady and they released this Baphomet beer, greatest of all time, Because when they do this stuff, not only does it normalize the goat as a symbol in our society, it also makes these people defensive and angry at people like us for exposing it. They hear this and like, you're ridiculous. It's the greatest of all time. And you say to them, hey, since when is it the greatest of all time? Since when has that become an accurate? Who made that a normal saying? LL Cool J? Or did you just constantly hear it because repetition's the key to mind control? And every time you turned on the TV, you'd hear these talking heads have debates. Who's the greatest president of all time? Who's the greatest quarterback of all time? Who's the greatest rock and roll band of all time? And then when repetition is the key to mind control, when all you hear is that, then suddenly you're defensive of the term because you think it's been normal your entire life. They've normalized it because everything that's done in secret, they're bringing out in the light and are normalizing. That's why you see ridiculous stuff like goat yoga. Why didn't they pick a cat? Why? Because the cat might scratch their back? Well, I mean, personally, I've never done yoga, but being in a stance like these people are, I don't think I'd want a goat's hooves on the back of my neck, okay? What, they couldn't pick anything else to put on their back? I mean, they might as well put a serpent because this is how obvious it is that they started normalizing goat yoga, right? And who normalized it? The celebrities did. Drew Barrymore was normalizing it. Khloe Kardashian, etc., right? And this all goes back. Why did they choose yoga with the goat? Because it goes back to Aleister Crowley. The 8 lectures of yoga. Aleister Crowley wasn't writing books on yoga because he was an exercise enthusiast. Aleister Crowley only wrote books on the occult and occult practices. And that's why he has a book on yoga. And that's why in today's world, you see yoga becoming so much more and more normalized. Now, don't be somebody who comments and says, well, I couldn't hurt. My back was so messed up, man. If I didn't do yoga, I would never have been able to walk again. I'm telling you why it's been normalized. And Aleister Crowley was even quoted saying to train the mind to move with the maximum speed and energy, with the utmost possible accuracy in the chosen direction, and with the minimum of disturbance or friction. That is magic. To stop the mind altogether, that is yoga. And like I said, we saw even guys like Kevin Hart, Kate Beckinsale, all these celebrities, they put this stuff out there because that's how they normalize it to you, right? The first time you hear it of a celebrity doing goat yoga, you're like, what? Huh? That's the common thing. Do you hear anybody saying it now? Why? Because 10 years have gone by and almost every single celebrity has done a skit on a Good Morning America show or on a reality show where they're doing goat yoga. And that's how they normalize this stuff without your brain actually realizing what they're doing. You think they just picked a goat out of all the animals that they could have picked. And what benefits does that do to anybody having a goat? I mean, that's how in our faces this stuff is. And don't forget, even recently, of course, this video has been scrubbed as well. It is available on the website. I covered how King Charles had this, I mean, it's so ridiculous how in our faces this stuff is, right? A young King Charles sculpted a unique goat 55 years ago, right? And he still held on to the goat, and the goat got auctioned off, or whoever had the goat kept the goat. And don't forget some of these rituals with King Charles when he's, put in as king or whatever the nonsense ritual might be, always having this goat around him, right? And nobody thinks anything of it. And in fact, even the term kid in our culture comes from goat. I get criticized all the time because in a lot of my videos, I say kid instead of children. And of course, I don't do that deliberately. I'm well aware that a kid is a child and it's also a young goat, which also is part of the meaning that they're, that they've decided to name children into kids, right? And their obsession with kids and their obsession with the goat. It's just one of those words that's hard to deprogram from. There's a lot of words that are hard to deprogram from because the training is so thick. So back to Donald Trump, right? We're supposed to believe that this is a meme because it says "and a memes" on the bottom. And we're supposed to look at this and we're supposed to say, it's no big deal, right? It's no big deal. And that's what people say in the comment section. I mean, here's somebody, Basha. He has 420 likes on this comment. The goat never represented Baphomet, and Baphomet is not a real deity. Baphomet does not exist in any known religious scripture on the planet. Baphomet was a Latin to French mistranslation regarding the Knights Templar and an artistic symbol associated with their order. It was never a real deity, demon, or creature. He means goat, greatest of all time, which Trump is. Please stop with the paranoia and do some reading, people. Okay, Basha, let's do some reading, Basha. Just because the term Baphomet is not in scripture, you will find words like scapegoat. You will find goat referenced in a lot of teachings of the people who worship the Baphomet. You know, the ones who celebrate Yom Kippur, right? The goat is mentioned, actually. Just because the term Baphomet does not mean that it's a mistranslation or that it's paranoia. What this is narcissism. This is people convincing themselves that what they mean is the greatest of all time. Stop it. Trump's the greatest of all time. Yeah? Well, guess what? You're in a psychosis, buddy. You're in a psychosis worshiping human beings, calling them the greatest of all time. It's pretty embarrassing, but it shouldn't surprise me because that's what we live among now, right? Men worshiping other men, men bowing down and saying, oh, he's the greatest of all. I mean, it's embarrassing. And that's why we're in the position we're in, because men aren't men anymore. Men aren't doing anything about what's happening around us. We're putting our faith in other men. And of course, the other men that people are putting their faith in are all fully compromised. So we're supposed to look at this picture as a joke. We're supposed to do some reading according to Basha, right? It's all paranoia. No, it's all truth in plain sight. It's just a matter of whether or not you can accept the reality for what it is. If you want to continue to live in the delusion, then be like Basha. If you want to continue your awakening, realize all of these people in politics and Hollywood are compromised, and they reveal who they worship every single day to all of us. And that's why when you take a picture like I showed earlier of all of them doing the all-seeing eye, show that to somebody. What's their reasoning? What's their response to it? Well, their brain can't process it because their brain has been trained to be dumb, to hear information and then think that information is real by deeming it news because it's on the television set, right? That's mind control. They turn it on, then they go and repeat the news as if it's real. They never could grasp the idea that the government fakes the news, which means that the government scripts these events out. Whether people really die or not, it does matter for the people involved, but they can never grasp that these events that they tell you are really happening are fictional. And by fictional, I mean scripted, planned, black ops carrying out these events at schools and malls and everywhere else, right? These people can't grasp that. They live in a different reality. So they could see a picture of every single celebrity holding a hand up over their eye. And they're likely going to respond by rolling their eye because some of them will look and they'll be like, oh yeah, they're all Satanists. Until they see one of their favorite celebrities like Mel Gibson, for example, right? Mel Gibson is now a conservative. So we can look at Lady Gaga, we can look at Madonna, and we could say they're Satanists. Tom Hanks is a Satanist, right? Oh, but Mel Gibson's into MAGA now. So we'll forgive Mel Gibson for doing the all-seeing eye. There's no way he could still be in the club. He broke free from all of that, right? They can't process the truth, which is why they continue to make excuses for the actions of these people all around us. And guess what? When this thing is burned into the ground, when Babylon falls, these same people are going to make excuses for Donald Trump, and they're going to be told to blame an invisible boogeyman. And that's what they'll do, because sheep will do as sheep will do, which is follow the herd, never think independently, but convince themselves that they are awake and thinking freely. That's the scariest part, but that's the world we live in 2025. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless all of you as always and your families.